Hello everyone, welcome
One second,
to.
I'll just tell. 1 second, just.
Okay, no problem.
Yes, we are live now.
Thank you everyone for joining in to our webinar. And I know this is a webinar on webinar, which is a pandemic's gift to urology. Is it really a gift? We'll find out from our lovely speakers today uh, of whether it's going to be a gift or is it going to be a nuisance. So we will hear about it. I want to first of all thank iTRUE, and UroSoMe for making this happen. I have got a constellation of stars here with me, starting from Dr. Jeremy Teo, Dr. Bhavan Rai, Dr. Vineet Gohar, Dr. Marcelo Warkowski, Dr. Zainal Edwin, Dr. Daniel Castellini, and Dr. Laudine Tanadir. And I've got my lovely host with me who is going to co-moderate with me, Dr. Shaviz Faizi. So welcome all to this webinar. This is a collaboration between iTRUE and UroSoMe. iTRUE is international training and research in uro-oncology and endourology, and UroSoMe is urology social media group. And this is a perfect harmony and a marriage for a webinar like this. First of all, I have to thank my co-moderator, Dr. Shaviz Faizi, who has kindly agreed. She's very charming, and she's a consultant in reproductive medicine, having done her MBBS and a master's in KMC Manipal. Then she has gone on to do her infertility and reproductive medicine subspecialty training from Kraft Hospital in Kerala, which is well recognized for this. And currently she is working as a consultant reproductive medicine in Unity Hospital in Mangalore. So welcome, Shaviz. Thank you very much for being with us. It is a real pleasure to have you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for your very kind introduction. Greetings from India. It is my pleasure to participate in this project, which is a collaboration between iTRUE and UroSoMe. I now take the honor to introduce Dr. Baskar Somani. I'm sure the urology community know you pretty well, sir. He is the president of the iTRUE group, and he is an active member of several committees like the BOSS Endourology, the president of the PITRA Euro group, and also a member of ESU and ESUT. He is the advisor to NICE Intervention Committee and NICE Urological Infection Guidelines. With his dedication, commitment, and passion for research and training, he collaborates national and international teaching and research across the globe. Today's webinar is an initiative between the iTRUE and the UroSoMe group to look for that silver lining in the cloud of the COVID-19 pandemic. Without any further ado, I would now like to introduce our speakers for today. Dr. Jeremy Teo, he is the assistant professor in Chinese University of Hong Kong. Dr. Jeremy is involved in promoting advanced endourological procedures and robotic surgeries, and also an avid researcher. He is considered as a mogul of the Twitter and has built the extremely popular UroSoMe community. He is a member of various committees, including OSTEG. We have with us Dr. Bhavan Rai. He is a consultant urological surgeon at Freeman Hospital, Newcastle, UK. He has expertise in robotic and minimally invasive surgeries, and he's also the chairman of Uro-Oncology Multidisciplinary Meeting at his hospital. He has published extensively on urological and surgical research, including systematic reviews in uro-oncology, and he's also a Cochrane database reviewer. We also have with us Dr. Vineet Gohar. He is a consultant urologist at the NUHS Singapore and a member of the iTRUE group. He has keen interest in endoluminal endourology and has subspecialized in renal cancer and penile surgery. He is a well-known figure in urology and is known for conducting world-class conferences and now webinars. We have with us Dr. Laudine Tanadir. He is the associate professor and head of endourology and stone disease at Marmara University, Istanbul, Turkey. He is a member of European Association of Urology, Patient Information Working Group, and UroSoMe Working Group. He has several publications to his credit, and he's also peer-reviewed several journals. We now also have Dr. Daniel Castellani. He's a consultant urologist at the IRCCS, Italy. His main interests are laser prostatectomy, mainly TULIP, laparoscopy, and endourology. Currently, he's doing research in TULIP for BPH and focal HIFU for prostate cancer. We have with us Dr. Zainal Adwin. He is a clinical specialist in urology, university technology at Mara, Malaysia. After doing his basic medical training at Ireland, he has served in the Malaysian military as a surgeon, and then he pursued urology right after. Presently, he is the social media consulting editor for the BJUI Compass. He is one of the co-members of the UroSoMe working group. We have Dr. Marcelo. He is a urologist at Albert Einstein Jewish Hospital, Sao Paulo, Brazil, and he is affiliated professor of urology at the ABC Medical School, Brazil, and also the vice president of the Brazilian Society of Urology. So we will now be proceeding with our first speaker for the day, and that is Dr. Jeremy. Welcome, Dr. Jeremy, and we can now start with your presentation.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Indeed, a great pleasure once again to collaborate with iTRUE. And I think the COVID pandemic has really caused a lot of disruption in terms of service, but then the pandemic of COVID has led to another pandemic of webinars. And after trying it out, I think we all see some merits of doing webinars and really start to think whether webinars will really be something that would carry on, especially after the COVID situation has settled. And so I think it's really a good idea for us to come together to have some discussions on this. And just to set the scene, I'm going to talk about the COVID-19 situation because the UroSoMe group has published a study on the impact of COVID-19 on urological surfaces. I think it's really good to present here just to let everybody know about the current situation. So the survey all started from late March, on 30th of March. And it was disseminated primarily via the social media platform, but we have also connected with a number of associations. So we did invite people via the mailing list as well. We mainly look into the service disruption due to COVID-19, and because we use social media platform as the mode of dissemination, actually the response is very overwhelming. So we have obtained more than 1,000 survey responses in just 9 days' time. And just to let you know about the situation during that time, when we started the survey, actually there were about 800,000 cases of COVID-19. 9 days later, we have 1.4 million cases of COVID-19 globally. So when we conducted the survey, it's really during the surge of the COVID-19. And because it's done during the surge of COVID-19, we need ways to really present the results with some very unique methodology. The primary outcome is simple. It's the degree of reduction in urological surfaces. But then we track and we try to stratify the results by geographical location based on the country of the survey respondents. We also try to pair the number of COVID cases of each individual respondent's country based on the date that they have input the survey. And basically, because we did track all the states, we're able to pair with the WHO data on a day-by-day manner. And then we also try to look into the degree of service disruption by the nature as well as by the urgency of urological conditions. We also have some relative qualitative questions during the survey. And about 1/4 of them voiced out manpower shortage problems, and 1/4 had to be deployed either in a voluntary or mandatory type of manner. Very unfortunately, because the risk of infection is really scary, so about half of our respondents expressed fear going to work, and very unfortunately, 1/3 only 1/3 of our respondents felt that they had adequate personal protective equipment. And despite the risks of COVID-19, especially at the beginning of the infection, some people thought it may not be such a serious condition, and some people thought it's just another flu. And it's really sad that 13% were actually advised not to wear a mask for fear of scaring the patients. And about 21% were advised not to have any contact with the media or not to have any mentioning of the COVID-19 situation on social media, again, for fear of scaring the people or creating any panic in their community. And 50% thought the postponement of services would affect the treatment and survival outcomes of the patient, and 60% expected a salary cut, despite the risks, despite the very hectic type of situation, where actually many of the urologists may have to postpone their original elective appointments, and therefore they have pay cuts in the end. This is just to show you a global map of about the disruption of the outpatient clinic. The places with minimal disruption have a very light blue color, and the places with the most disruption have a dark blue color here. And you can see COVID-19 really has a global impact in terms of the degree of cut down. And most places were affected, including some parts of Europe, South America, West Asia, United States, Russia, Australia. There are 2 areas where the impact seems to be less, for example, in China and also some parts of Africa. And the pattern of the cut down services is consistent across different types of urological service, including outpatient clinics, urological investigation procedure, as well as urological surgeries. If we look into the cut down of services stratified by the degree of outbreak, then you can see this figure here. It's a little bit complicated, but basically we try to divide the respondents based on the number of cases that their country is having during that time into the different percentiles, 20th, 40th, 60th, 80th, and 100th. And so on the y-axis here, it's about the cut down percentage of urological surgeries from no cut to more than 80% cut. So I think it's quite, it's very consistent finding that the places with the lowest degree of outbreak actually didn't have much cut down. But then as the degree of COVID-19 cases increases, then we can see an increasing degree of cut down as well. So actually about 13% in the most affected areas has more than 80% cut down surgery, which is it's a lot actually, it's a great disruption. And again, this pattern is being observed across outpatient clinic, across investigations, as well as surgeries. If we look into the disruption of services based on the conditions, then we can see an interesting pattern as well. Basically, we try to divide the conditions into 3 types: benign and non-urgent conditions. Benign but potentially urgent conditions, for example, uteric stone, because if you don't treat it, then the kidney function might be affected. Renal transplantation, because the graft kidney is, the supply is really unpredictable, and once you have it, you don't want to have any delay. So these are things that we feel that it's benign but potentially urgent. And of course, we have malignant conditions as well. And across different types of services, again, benign conditions are being most affected. And this is ranging from 60% to more than 90%. And benign but potentially urgent ones are less affected, and expectedly, unfortunately, malignant conditions are least affected. in terms of clinics, procedures, as well as surgeries. But then it doesn't mean that patients are not affected, because when you have a delay in the clinics, and obviously you will delay investigations and then followed by delay of surgery. So some patients will have a very prolonged type of management course just because of the COVID-19 situation. And if we look into the delay of urological services, then basically about 30% of respondents reported delay of services of more than 8 weeks. But again, this can increase based on the stage of the workup, for example, and so it can be more than that. And besides some conditions, for example, bladder cancer, muscle-invasive bladder cancer requires cystectomy, delay of more than 8 weeks is actually not very optimal because the survival outcome may really be affected. And this is just to set a scene of the current situation. If you want to look into the details of the results, feel free to go to European Urology page. The paper has already been formally published recently. In summary, COVID-19 definitely had a severe impact on the urological healthcare professionals and the provision of urological services. Most countries and continents were affected, regardless of geographical location. Service disruption increased with the degree of outbreak. Urological services for benign conditions were more affected than malignant conditions. And definitely there's a significant delay of services in a global perspective. So I will just end my talk here, and then feel free to ask questions, but I think the subsequent part of programs will be the real highlights of discussion regarding webinars versus face-to-face conferences. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeremy, once again for an eye-opening talk on COVID, and very pertinent still, and probably it's going to be pertinent, forever when a pandemic like this happens. What happens? Our next presenter will be Dr. Bhavan Rai, and he's going to tell us all about how to organize an extraordinary webinar like this one. Thank you. Bhavan, we can't hear you. Still can't hear you, Bhavan. Try again. His screen is frozen. Let's give us some more time. So I think the webinars are the way forward. May not be for all occasions, but certainly for a few occasions. Bhavan, do you want to try your mic again?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, everybody, depending on where you've tuned in from. I'll be speaking today on how one can organize a webinar. I do have a disclaimer to disclose. I've only ever organized one webinar, and it was yesterday. So I do feel a bit of fraud presenting today on this topic, especially because I have champions of webinars such as Jeremy Teo, Yaloran, and Vineet amidst us today. So please, guys, please accept my apologies if I say something silly, but I'll try and give all my viewers what I've learned from the webinar and what we've learned from our experiences, and I do hope you enjoy it. Now, we all know COVID-19 has had a significant impact on our life. It's impacted every facet of our lives. And it's inevitable that it will impact our life in urology. Jeremy has published or presented the excellent work that UroSoMe has done with this survey, and the outcomes, as anticipated, showed decrease in activity across all aspects of urology, be it surgical, outpatient, clinical, or investigative urology. It also impacted big conferences such as EAU, AUA, and what they did was look into webinars as a mode of transmitting academic activity. Now, as urologists, as medics in general, we are all very resilient. In every adversity, we see opportunities, and we saw an opportunity in this situation as well. And we in iTRUE thought yes, a lot of big communities have, bigger organizations have done webinars, but it's something that we as perhaps slightly smaller organizations can do as well. We were a little late in getting into webinars, and I'd like to just show you a WhatsApp message that me and Zishan had on our iTRUE. It was on the 10th of May that we suggested, let's get into the webinar scene. Okay, and Zishan, we all know what Zishan's like. Very flamboyant, very resilient, he's got multiple talents. And he gleefully agreed. To this day, he reminds me of this, because we were not quite sure as to what the enormity of the task was. So like everyone, what we did was we did our market research. How old was webinars? And we were actually a little surprised, perhaps a reflection of our naivety, that webinars aren't new. They were available even in World War II. We're also aware that there are multiple media houses that use webinars to display and talk about daily news activities. So that's when fear crept into iTRUE. What do we do next? What does everybody do in this situation? There's one source that answers every question: Google. So we got into Google and we typed in, how do you organize a webinar? But we are also dependent on divine intervention. And trust me, there were a lot of prayers that went in when we got into this venture. And Google was useful because what we saw was a number of articles that were presented on how to organize a good webinar. And it only gave us insight into what our fears were. The task was huge. And this is what we felt at that time. It was like a batsman ducking a fast, fierce bouncer. But we were committed to the task. And we thought, okay, people have done it. We're relative novices. Let's have our own personality. Let's have our own mantra. We thought we need to give ourselves time. We started on the 10th of May. We gave the last week of June to give our first presentation. We thought by starting early, we had time to plan. And like everyone else within the group, our fears were similar. The overwhelming emotion was one of anxiety. We had our trepidations, and all we really wanted to do was survive. But we thought if we give it an honest approach, we try and learn from others, we share our concerns with others, and do it with all honesty, there's a reasonable chance that we would succeed and potentially even excel. We all got onto the drawing board. Our first task was to choose a theme. And we scratched our heads. We did a lot of that. And the most topical issue, obviously, at the time was COVID-19. There were a number of other academic themes as well. And iTRUE, along with a lot of other groups, are committed to academic activity. But with webinars, what we felt was that we had a very powerful platform. And with a very powerful platform, you have responsibility. We all have talked about various issues behind closed doors, things that we think could be done better within our own communities. Often we rely on senior leadership to change it. But the reality is that if you do want change, you have to be the change. And this was how our first webinar came into fruition. This was what we all as a group felt very strongly about. And we also felt that this is likely to resonate with our audience. And this was our first webinar, which was on celebrating the success of women in urology. I'd like to just reduce my webinar just now, my presentation, and play a video of the flyers that we put out, because I think it very beautifully
sorry, you have been locked out.
Experienced yesterday.
Bhavan,
We had 5 spectacular women who've contributed significantly into urology, who've done, I think my screen's not sharing, is it?
Yeah, Bhavan, your screen is not sharing. I was going to say that. Can you share your screen again?
Okay, I'll do that again. Can you see it now? Yeah, okay. So I'll just go and play the video again. So what I was talking about was this video. This was the flyers that we sent out. And I think it very beautifully depicted what we experienced yesterday. We've had 5 spectacular women who've contributed immensely into urology, not just urology, into various aspects of life in general. And we were all inspired by them. I think our audience was inspired by them. And I think we will have a lot of young women and a lot of men who are also inspired by them. I think I'll have to just stop screening and go back to my presentation again. So if you could just accept my apologies for that. And I will come to my presentation now. So can you see me now? Yes, I think you can see it. Fine. Yeah. So like I said, it was a very fulfilling experience. It was an inspiration, I think, not just for us as a group, for women all over the world, and potentially for a lot of men. And what it also has is an impact on wider society. So we did a quick survey after the webinar. We had over 900 viewers. What we achieved with this platform is a global reach. There were people from all aspects of life. It was not just urologists, it was not just medics. A lot of people tuned into this because they resonated with the concept. Within urology, within medicine, we had people from various peers, people from various aspects of, or at different stages in their careers. So we had consultants, we had residents, we had students. So I think we may be underestimating the effect that webinars may have. And I don't think we would have achieved this maybe with other platforms. The next task was first for us to choose our speakers. And what we thought was, we have to think about speakers slightly differently. And as a group, we thought of it as three broad groups. We thought of experienced speakers, we thought of unsung heroes, and budding stars. And I'd like to elaborate on this just now. Experienced speakers are speakers that we all are aware of. We've seen them regularly. They've got a great track record. They put up a good show. They're confident, they're charismatic. The crowds and the audience and your viewers know who they are. Because they've got a track record and they deliver a good show, they are the ones who will often pull the crowd. But it's the second group that I'm quite passionate about, our group's quite passionate about. All of us have been influenced by a number of people in our careers. I can remember of one trainer that I've had, Mr. Derek Byrne. He trained me in everything that I know today. He was also a person who had a lot of talent, but he was shy. He didn't want the limelight. But his experience is important for the world to see. It's important that as a group, we give these individuals the platform because they deserve the platform. The next is the budding star. And I call this the Netflix movement in webinars. Netflix has given a platform to a lot of novel concepts, new movies, different actors. We can do that with webinars. This does require for us to do some research. This does require for us to find out who that person is who's going to be a budding star. These guys will be refreshing. The concepts will be novel. And because they're young, they are going to be enthusiastic and very well prepared. The next task was to have a team. And we were fortunate because our team was similar to the Chicago Bulls team that won the number of NBA titles they did. We had superstars such as Zishan and Baskar, who've been in this business very camera friendly. But we were also very fortunate that we had a lot of people in the background. We had Milab Shah, we had Nitish Naik, and we had Sufyan Ibrahim. And I'd like to really thank these guys today because I do not believe that without their work, we would have been as successful as we were yesterday. So every team will have people with different skills. So in summary, the team that you have has to be committed to the venture. They have to be passionate about the venture, but you must also have a wide skill base. You'll have individuals who are confident, who are dynamic, who are organized, with good administrative skills and with IT skills. It's important to collaborate. And what we see from today is a perfect advertisement of collaboration. What this shows is that diversity is massive. What this does is helps you learn from your peers from different parts of the world. It gives you a different perspective. It makes you broad-minded. It increases your reach. But for me, from a personal level, the reason why this is important is also that you make new friendships. you foster new relationships. And we can only win as a group, we can only fail as individuals. So please collaborate. Before the big show, you have to advertise. And there are various mediums that you can use to advertise. You can go to social media, there are multiple sources, and there's also urological bodies. Within our webinar yesterday, BOWS supported us, and we're very grateful to them for that. They strongly believed in our concept, and hence they supported us. And this helps you get a wider reach. There are also dedicated bodies such as doc meetings, which will advertise your webinars as well. Just one word of caution. My personal philosophy is that anything in moderation works and anything in extremes doesn't work. Too much of advertisement can occasionally be off-putting, so you may want to just know what just the right amount is. I'd like to now go on to host preparation. Now, there is a lot of work that goes into preparation, and you cannot be prepared enough. So I'd like to start with the host preparation. I think it's important you know your platform. There are a number of platforms out there, and any amount of preparation can still make it quite intimidating and daunting. So do work on your platform a little bit, I'd say. I think it's important to have more than one moderator, particularly in a platform that is so reliant on technology. So if one of us or one of the moderators has a technical glitch, the other moderator can take over. I think dry runs are extremely important. Now, most people think that dry runs are there because you want to iron out technical glitches. But the reality remains that it's also an icebreaker. You have to remember that most people who come into their webinars may perhaps not know each other. So those early introductions are useful. It helps you break the ice. It also helps you calm your nerves just before the final event. Etiquette. I think etiquette is very important. I think it's important that we treat our speakers with respect. We're courteous to them. We stick to timelines. You remember that a lot of these people might be very busy. It's also important to realize that let's not assume that every information that we share about our speaker, they'd be happy with that. Take consent, take their permission before you share any of their information. I'd like to now go to the speakers and some suggestions. Now, the reason I write Dilip Mishra here is this was advice given to me by Dilip Mishra. Dilip and Zishan organized the Youth Conclave in India a couple of weeks back. This was a 12-hour webinar, and it was a huge success with over 1,000 viewers. And I think it's a great advertisement for young urology in India. And I'm sure that Dilip wouldn't mind it if I share what tricks he's given me. Have a good internet connection, extremely important. Have your computer attached to a battery, continuously have it completely charged. Now, I'm someone who's personally experienced this. It's important for you to give your talks in a place where it's private and you're not interrupted by friends or family. I was interrupted by my 3-year-old boy. I suspect he's a budding urologist, so he thought it was the right thing to do. So he joined. Whilst it's quite personable, I think the difficulty is that when someone interrupts you, it breaks your flow of thought. So my suggestion would be try and find a personal space. Try and avoid using your phone. I don't think a phone is a robust enough mechanism. My suggestion would be that you use a computer, a laptop, or a desktop. There are multiple speakers. It's helpful if you could mute yourself so that other speakers could be heard clearly. Remember, these webinars can be long affairs. You may want to take a comfort break. You may want to have a snack. So turn off your camera when you do that. And again, for the speaker as well, do practice screen sharing. It's, in my view, one of the most trickiest things, and it's when you can get things wrong quite often. Despite all your preparations, your screen could still be like this. Things could still go wrong. There will be glitches. Keep calm. Remember, both your panelists and your viewers are usually reasonable people. They understand when things like this happen. This is very technology dependent, and we know how unreliable that can be. The show must go on. You have friends and they will carry on. So don't let it affect you. So I'd like to conclude my talk by just a message to our viewers. Please do give us feedback, because what we do today, we don't really know if we're doing it well or not. We also do not have an audience that we can see, so we don't have any visual cues. So your feedback is extremely important to us so that we know that we're doing the right thing. It helps us quality assure the work we're doing. But this is also an opportunity for you to express what you'd like presented. There may be topics that you're very passionate about. Please do let us know, and we will use these topics and make a very concerted effort to have future webinars on these topics. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pawan. That was a very nice feedback on how to conduct a webinar. And I know ours yesterday was attended by close to 1,000. So we are still basking on that glory. With that note, I'm going to invite our next speaker, Dr. Vineet Gohar, who has probably done and conducted and been a part of so many webinars that there's so much to learn from him. And all of his webinars are well polished and very successful. So Vineet, thank you very much. You are on next. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. So yeah, I think Bhavan has really nicely put together the first and most important point that the biggest challenge in a webinar, according to me, is to have good collaboration. And if you can have good collaboration like this one, I think half your battle is won, because you get people from diverse backgrounds. You are able to communicate with audience across the world. And as well, you learn and you share and you progress, and you know from your mistakes what you can avoid for the next webinar. And today we are grateful that all of us have come together. And thank you, Nitish, and thank you, iTRUE. And it's very rare that I have the privilege of saying that I'm a member of all three, and it gives me immense pleasure to be here to talk about what I think is the right way forward in learning from the challenges that I've faced. I conducted my first webinar on April 25th, and that was to do on how urology has affected people all over the world. And it was great because we had from the US, from the UK. My first challenge, which I realized at that point of time, is to get all the speakers together at different time zones. So the very first thing that I'd like to say is that if you are choosing your speakers, you need to know that they will be comfortable at a certain time. If you have that challenge overcome, everything else is a breeze if you prepare for it. But I'd like to highlight from a bit of experience and a bit of probably internet research as to what are the challenges that we need to overcome. These are the three most important, or rather most widely asked questions right now. And the challenges faced today is, when will this pandemic end? Well, we are not talking really about the pandemic too, but we are also talking about the too many damn webinars. But I don't think this is going to end, and I'll try to show you why. The next question, as you know, everybody asks in the beginning is, am I audible now? And the attitude today when you start that in a webinar is, if the speaker is not good, like Bhavan said, or it's a disinteresting topic, you're just hoping, okay, can you just move on, please? And can you see my screen? Yes, I think these two questions are critical, like Bhavan said, because that is the most important challenge to overcome before you start presenting. So make sure that your screen is seen and you're audible, because very often we talk and we don't know whether somebody is able to see your screen, and you're not coordinated with your screen. So I hope I am. I'll ask this famous questions. Am I audible and can you see my screen? And usually somebody answers you yes. So assuming that yes, if I put this picture up to you, the first thing that strikes you is he's talking about coronavirus and COVID. You'll be surprised that this is not really coronavirus and COVID. This is on basically the use or the utility or the widespread effect internet has, and webinars is a really massive influence all over the world. And this is not just webinars. If you take webinars in comparison to Facebook, which is probably got the maximum users, at any given point of time, people have logged in from every single part of the world into some webinar. And when like Dr. Baskar said, or Bhavan said, that they had 1,000 people yesterday, that's just a reflection of the community's interest in webinars. And I do see that maintains, because if you have something which is unique, a person will definitely try to log in no matter where he is from. And Google Trends is a great way to show that. And I've used that over here. And I highlighted even the African subcontinent, which is not a avid Facebook user community profile, it's on their Facebook page. They say that this is one content where they're trying to tap in. Even there, you have a lot of users who actually log in for webinars. The platforms sometimes are a challenge there. For example, there was also a platform challenge that I faced in China. And recently I had a webinar where I had to use a platform called Woo or from Tencent meetings. And despite that, there were lots of hurdles that we faced. So it's important to know who your target audience is, because you're going to choose your platform, very importantly, which is universally compatible. If you see a screen like this, you know the first thing, that this is how it was when the whole concept of the pandemic broke out, and the whole world was just wondering what to do. And at that time, we suddenly introduced webinars, and that was the beginning. And it was well understood by everybody that brace yourself, these webinars are coming. And then at present, because there are so many happening, we probably in form of a webinar coma. But we don't want this to happen. We don't want the webinar to be the cause of death of a beautiful platform, which can be a source of sharing of knowledge, interaction. And I think the key lies in the people who organize the webinar, and there are certain things that they should understand. If you even look at the trends is the interest waving or is interest veering away? I don't think the interest is weaning away, because in 2019 there was absolutely no interest, and then the pandemic happened, and then it peaked. But after that, it really hasn't dropped. It's a waning and waxing reaction. But I do think that the trend is still that webinars are something which people want to attend, but they are extremely super selective about now. But yes, this shows you that the world over, there are certain countries which are extremely proactive when it comes to webinars. And it doesn't really matter whether you are from a developed country or a developing country, because internet is everywhere. So that's something to keep in mind and utilize to its fullest potential. Yes, like Bhavan, I also did this. I said, Lord Google, are webinars good or are webinars bad? And I think I got a massive amount of our webinars bad result. But it did say there's nothing intrinsically wrong with webinars, but there are certain potential problems. But at the same time, it also said that webinars are a great way to attract new eyes and new leads. And I don't think we are customers over here, but I think we extrapolate that to interaction with people. So if you use this as a background, I would say that yes, there are problems. Definitely there are challenges. But then that's the whole idea. We should solve those problems. So we know the good. And what's the good? The webinars are a great tool. They're a great tool for any person using to generate an enormous amount of interest in whatever you're hosting that webinar for. The bad, if you are poorly prepared, when I say poor preparation, it was something which overlaps with what Bhavan said. Either you are poorly prepared as a host, or you are poorly prepared as a presenter. It could reflect in your talk and could create a bit of disinterest in the audience. Presentation is key. Try to keep your presentation pertinent to the topic given to you, as well as try to keep the presentation a bit interactive. Planning, and I think this is to do with really hosting a webinar. Planning is, as he said, it's not a one-man job. It's a whole team. You have to have a whole team help you plan a webinar. You can't do this alone. You may have a concept, but unless you have somebody to help you execute it, you really can't. But the problem is really the technical variables that come in. And technical variables starts with internet connectivity. Very often, internet connectivity can be the Achilles heel to having a flop webinar. And that challenge is probably something which you need to understand in your region. How best can I, tackle it? So when somebody chooses you as a speaker, let them know what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses when it comes to your technical availabilities. And there are many ways to counter all these problems. A very simple way, for example, is send your presentation to the host who may be in a better environment, who can probably host your screen, and then you talk through that screen. And we've had to do that. I've had to do that once, where I had two very eminent speakers whose screens I had to share, but they were so confident and they were so at ease to even discuss it while that happens. So there's always a solution. There's always a solution to be found, and it has to be considered well before you go on live. A poor impression. At the end of a webinar, if you leave a poor impression, unfortunately, a person is not going to come back if he sees you as a host or you as a participant in that webinar, or maybe it will probably create a kind of impression which a person, should I or should I not? And with the multitude of webinars available, you try and leave a lasting impression so that the person takes maybe a message which says, next time he's conducting a webinar or next time he's participating in a webinar, I must make a mental note to try and go for that webinar. So a lasting impression is very important. A lasting impression also requires you to prepare very well on the subject given to you and be very sure about what you relay, the content. And I think when we talk about content, the main challenges in a webinar are both content challenge as well as process challenge. To explain content challenge in a little more simplified way, for example, if somebody is at this point of time thinking, how does he feel about the webinar, and he wants to slap himself, then all of us here have missed the boat. Maybe if he's thinking of that in my topic, then I definitely have missed the boat. So content challenge is usually what happens is too many webinars on the same topic. But you can't avoid that, can you? Because everybody is trying to showcase their strengths and their attributes in different parts of the world where they practice. Maybe if it's a topic which interests you, log in. I'm sure you'll find something that you have to learn from there. I have plenty of things that I've learned incorporated into clinical practice as well. Too many speakers. I don't think it's a bad idea to have too many speakers, but let the speakers not compete with themselves. So try to diversify the topic choice which you give them. Again, that brings you too many topics. Sometimes it can dilute the whole essence of that webinar. If you're trying to host a webinar for a couple of hours and you give 15 topics to maybe 10 speakers or 15 speakers, I mean, remember, it's not a preparation course. This is not, you could have a webinar as a prep course, but then be sure that's what you want to target. Very often we try to please too many people by saying, oh, I have to get everybody involved in my webinar. And I have had the chance to attend one of those webinars where many senior people were there. It was great to see so many esteemed faculty on board, but it was too dull. It was too boring, and everybody was not given enough time, and it diluted and it defeated the whole purpose of the webinar. Too long a time. Initially, I thought that this is a problem, and I always believed the concept that short and sweet is best. But then I attended the Youth USI meeting, which Zishan and the Urology Society of India conducted. And like Dr. Bhavan said, it was a whole day event, and fascinating to see 800 people logged in all the time. It was something which I made a mental note and said that you should probably change that attitude. If you have the right content, if you have the right audience, and if you probably have made all the necessary arrangements, people will stay on. They will stay on. I'm not too sure if we are supposed to provide them catheters, but then it's amazing how 800 people logged in and stuck onto the screens at any given point of time. And I kudos to that webinar, because it really opened my perception about long time in webinars. But I personally think if you have a webinar for a couple of hours and the message is short and sweet, you're probably having a better audience appeal. Virtual meeting. Now, you have probably think of virtual meeting as a webinar. Yes and no. Virtual meeting is really multiple webinars in one. And today, many of the bodies are hosting multiple webinars in one, or virtual meetings. And I think this is probably something which is going to be important because it can be held over days. It's just like any face-to-face meeting that we hold today. It gives you a similar concept of attending a meeting. The environment, of course, is in a virtual environment, but it does have potential. We'll come back to this a little later as we move on in the meeting today. It's very important to hold the attention of the audience. So try to be very clear about the message that you want to convey. And like I said, time zones, it's unavoidable, but you have to be, trying to get your hosts, get your speakers on a similar platform at a time convenient for all. But for those audiences who can't really advertise and say you have a recorded version, and then you can overcome that challenge, and you'd be surprised. One of the times where Alto was hosting a webinar for me, and I was a little sad. I didn't have the expectations because even I wanted a number which said 4 figures. But I was pleasantly surprised when the next day the recorded version hit more than 2,000 hits, and I was like, "Wow, okay, so people do log in. Maybe they couldn't log in at that time." So keep that as something in mind. Language, you have to try to use a universal language. But yes, it could happen that if you are conducting it in say in South America, where maybe Spanish is the preferred language, so you would have to target your audience and your language based on the audience that you do have. A very nice concept which was recently organized, where Prof. Traxia and Manoj Monga had participated. They had it in English and it was translated in Spanish, and I really thought there would be hiccups, but no, I think they overcome that challenge very well. There was a translator, she did a fantastic job, and she didn't really mix up anything. So yeah, there's always a solution. That's what I said. Problem solving is very important. If I have to take the process, I think most of it was probably already alluded to by Bhavan. But I would say this is a platform where the speaker's nerves have to be kept in mind. So if you are not a confident speaker, don't worry, because you're sitting in a virtual environment, you're sitting at home, or maybe in a room where people can't come and slap you. People can't really say anything much. So your speaker should be given the confidence by the host. I think you can do it. It's very important when you have younger junior residents, trainees who are participating for the first time, because if you give them that confidence carries through all the way. Poor attendance, I think it's something which multifactorial. So you must be keeping that in mind, that how do you attract? And I think that was already mentioned. I won't go into details. Access issues, I think it's quintessential that if you cannot give them an easy access, too long, too difficult an access. For example, you need to pre-register through this link, and then the company, for example, if they're hosting, they will give you access, or you will give them access on the day. It really disinterests people. Something like what we are today. Log in, get this website, click here, join in, simple and easy. It's the best way, I think so. Background noise, believe me, it's a real turn off. It's a turn off, I mean. If constantly there is a participant making some noise, there were times where somebody was eating peanuts, there were times where somebody was clearing his throat and hacking, or you may not realize that your place where you're hosting your webinar could be in a noisy environment. Please minimize the background noise. Please ask your host to mute everybody else except you during the conversation. A lack of engagement. A lack of engagement is something that is really, I've come to understand that could be a turn off. So you want the audience to interact with you if it's possible. Technical problems, well, we come back to the same thing. Can you hear me? Can you see me? This is something which you can iron out by having dry run before. And lack of questions. If it has been seen, or there are studies which have shown that those webinars where Q&A was not asked, the attendees in the following webinars were not too many. And I don't know if that really holds good for everything, but then just something to bear in mind. So like I said, to reinforce, the speaker is key. Advertise well, simplify your access. Host should maintain control. It would be great to have a couple of hosts at the same time, because one may not be able to do a long webinar completely, or there may be his own technical issues he has to handle. Interactive, I don't think there's any better way to say, but interactive today is you can run polls, you can run quiz, you can have these emoji. We used that recently in one of the webinars. It was pretty exciting to see people happily using emojis during the webinar. It kind of expressed a feeling. And then voting, of course, most common way. An audio video trial, like I mentioned, has to be done before. And questionnaires, it's something either you can prepare before, you can send out these questionnaires to who you think will be the audience who should answer it, like a poll, or you can ask lead questions as we move on. That's to do with the moderator, and be relevant to what you're asking. So again, a moderator of a webinar is just like an event MC. He or she have to really engage the audience with the participants. And the participants have to be excited about taking all the questions that come in, because the audience probably wants to know more, especially when they're topics which are very new, relevant, current, and something unique. So I think a mix of everything is what is very important to have a good webinar and to overcome the challenges that happen with it. Something which is happening all the time is hacking. A lot of people unwantedly they hack in. So the best way is to, at this point, the best way I think is to just give permission only to the people who are participating as speakers or hosts to be logged in into that particular web room. And like we are doing, Nitish is hosting it for us. The iTRUE Facebook page is hosting for us. Those are platforms which are secure and it's universally available. So people, the audience can log in over there. You can still have the same interaction. So that's it did happen with a very prominent speaker recently, and it was very embarrassing to see adversities being typed on the screen and constantly being interrupted. So the host has to really bear in mind about being hacked. Yes, I think perhaps too much of everything is as bad as too little, but this is not something which we can really control. So we have to aim at making the unavoidable avoidable, and that's the best way to overcome a challenge at this point of time. Thank you very much. Yeah, I just wanted to sort of end it with here with saying, but I think he said it very clearly that we have to be responsible, stay ethical, and at the end of it, if the audience tells you you're awesome, you've really done what's necessary. But if the audience has this reaction, could you please put your microphone on mute? Then you've lost the game over there.
Thank you, Dr. Vinny. I'd also like to thank our other two speakers for today, Dr. Jeremy and Dr. Bhavan. We will now proceed to the discussion for our webinar. And as much as we all know that we would like to go back to the pre-pandemic era, where we had face-to-face conferences and exchange of ideas and views, we cannot deny that times are changing. The human race is known to adapt, and here we are adapting to the latest situation. So I'll just share my screen where you can have a look at the topics that we feel are pertinent for today's discussion regarding the face-to-face conferences and webinars. Not able to share my screen.
I think Yellorin has already shared his. So now you can do it. Thanks.
I wanted, yes. So we have 5 guests with us, and each of them will be speaking for just about 5 minutes on some pertinent topics. We have Dr. will be speaking on cost effectiveness of these webinars versus face-to-face conferences. We have Dr. Danielle, who will be speaking on patient privacy. Dr. Zainal Adwin, who will be speaking on reach of audience. Dr. Marcelo on the opportunities for research, collaboration, and social networking. And Dr. Vineet Gohar, hybrid conference. So we will now.
I think, Shaviz, your voice went a little bit. Yeah, we'll go ahead with the first presentation. Dr. Yellorin, please.
Thank you very much. You can hear me well, right?
Yes.
Okay. So after 3 excellent talks, we are going to discuss about the cost effectiveness of the webinars in terms of whether they are good or not in terms of meetings, real meetings. I do not want to steal too much time from you. In 5 minutes time, I will try to discuss the problems that we have about the face-to-face meetings and webinars. So why do people want to attend to a conference? It might sound like a weird question or stupid question, but actually this is the ultimate question that we need to answer. Even more today, when we are talking about the new normal in which social distance is a must, there are certain social and educational benefits which face-to-face meetings bring to attendance. Speakers, sponsors, in the modern age that we're living, where the free information is really available in everywhere, and time is very important for us. So the fundamental reasons can be to network, to meet with industry peers, to meet with the ones who may work with you, who are like-minded like you. And since you cannot travel to every geographical location, it is the best way to have the network. To expand the knowledge, every new information and technology equipment will be presented in a conference, in a meeting. And there are also unpublished data, which you can also find in the meetings. To find solutions to certain problems, because we all have individual problems which we are working in our own field, and you are not aware of the other experts in all around the world to present ideas. Presenting your ideas will give you new perspective about your work, as some people may have questions that you had never thought of. And you may get feedback from the others to provide new insights and gain time as you may work with others. To learn beyond the field of your interest, you can have many sessions for the professional development and career advice. And there are also other benefits like having a new job, like visiting to new sites. It might be a vocation for you to discover a new culture, and you can also demonstrate your pre and postgraduate education credits. To summarize, these are very good events to have a new idea, to have a new opportunity to solve problems, to brainstorm, to gain experience and knowledge, and to have fun. But we have some issues, especially about the cost. First of all, we must know the partners. There are 4 major partners in the cost. One is industry, the other one is organizer, the third one is speaker, but the meetings are actually for the audience. So the cost is mainly a problem for the audience. What are the costs? There are travel expenses, there are accommodation expenses, there are expenses for the transformation of the goods for the industry, and there is also a venue. You have to have a specific place to do the meeting, and the first 2 is actually true for every partner. However, the last 2 are only problems for the industry and the organizer. However, organizer have to get the money from somewhere else, which is generally the audience. Well, you know, for the last a couple of months, we have an important issue. This COVID pandemic has introduced webinars into the real life. So when we cannot get together with the real meetings, the main let's say societies try to have the virtual meetings. One of them is EAU. They actually need to cancel the real meeting and they introduce the virtual meeting. And when you look from the side of the attendees, the registration fee has been down. It has been reduced to almost more than 90% of the original one. So this is a major issue for the audience. So what are the advantages of webinars? They are more flexible and convenient, which means there is no time limit. You can always go back and watch whatever you want to watch. So this also provides an important advantage in the time, we are working, when we give up our works, we also lose money. So this flexibility and convenient fashion is really helpful for us. It is really hard to overcome geographic limitations. For the meetings, you have to travel to another continent, to another country. Maybe you have to take a flight for the transatlantic journey, and these are major costs. So these two, when you get rid of these two, meetings, webinars are really cost effective. However, webinars also have some disadvantages. For example, the interaction is very limited. The lack of atmosphere is really lacking. I mean, if you can't see the faces of the attendees, then you are not sure if you are really catching their attention. And the teamwork, the networking is very limited. And there are many technical challenges that you have to get rid of. You have to have a good internet connection. This is a must. So for the last slide, I want to just give you a brief information about a study that iTRUE and UroSoMe decided to go with together. If you still didn't take this survey, please do, so that we can understand more about the webinars and virtual meetings and how we can help urologists about this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Tanadir. And now we move on to our next speaker. I'd now like to invite Dr. Daniel to share his screen.
Yes, just a second. Okay, can you see me now?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm going to cover briefly the aspect of patient privacy in webinar, which is quite similar to the aspect of patient privacy in social media. So why is it so important maintaining patient confidentiality and privacy? Because the relationship between physician and patient works when this interaction is undertaken with an implicit understanding of privacy. We, I would say, must maintain a level of professionalism at all time in all our job. The importance of patient privacy is not new. Date back in ancient Greece, when we faced for the first time in the Hippocratic oath, where Hippocrates stated he will never diffuse patient information, but always patient information need to be kept secret and never relieved. So urological patient and generally surgical patient have a greater risk to confidential violation because they most of the time lack exercise for their autonomy of conscience in two situations: in an emergency settings where patients do not have usually sufficient level of awareness and time for appropriate concern. And of course, during surgery, where they are anesthetizated, I am quite sure that everybody here had at least once in his career taken a photograph or recorded video during surgery to be shown later. So the failure to comply with patient privacy could be a disaster for us because may impact a doctor relation to practice, or might be also worse, resulting in serious legal action. We have here a couple of examples of physicians in USA who have been penalized seriously for disseminate patient photographs on Facebook, for example. So in the last year came out a lot of paper with guidelines. We have now guidelines from AIU, EAU, and also the British Journal of Urology has its own guideline on social media. I strongly suggest to read this brief paper because inside you can find nice information on patient privacy, which can be also used, of course, at a great value in webinars. There are simply 3 rules to be followed. We should protect patient privacy and confidentiality at all time. We should ask always for patient consent before taking any image or recording video or sharing health information, even if the patient is not identifiable, because his date, his location, our hospital might indirectly identify the patient to others. Even in webinar, we should not discuss treatment of pathology in a way that could lead to patient identification, because even vague clinical detail can result in patient identification. So this is a simple rule to be followed, what we need to know and keep in mind when organizing our webinar. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Dania. I'd now like to invite Dr. Zainal Adwin to share his screen.
All right. Here we go. Hi, everybody. I'm not going to ask, can you hear me? I'm just going to assume that you are hearing me clear. If you're not, could the moderators just give me a hint or something like that? So I'm Zainal, I'm from Malaysia. I'm going to talk about reach. So pretty much clear what the pandemic is doing to us. It's a life-altering event for everybody. We are at the moment adapting to a new norm, and we are slowly winning the battle, I would say, globally. There are some places that are doing much better than the other, but all in all, humanity will prevail. So we are at the moment flooded with multiple online seminars, also known as webinars. On average, I think we have an average of 1 webinar per day. Topics and timings are variable. We have a lot of geographical variation and timing variation in terms of webinars. So we've heard about the lectures on webinars. Dr. Lauren has talked about cost. Katsulani has talked about privacy. And later on, Drs. Marcelo and Gauhar will talk about networking and hybrid conferences. So I'm going to talk about reach. What is reach? Reach in this context means that the reacher is the center of the universe. Everything revolves around getting content to the listener. The meeting supposedly goes to the participant rather than the participant goes to the meeting. So outreach is the principal activity of audience engagement. Engagement is all about building relationships and developing them. So let's talk about webinars. Webinars, there are a lot of points for webinars at the moment. Webinars are flexible. You pick what you want to listen to, you pick what you want to watch to, you can time it to whatever is convenient to you, you can commit to whatever you are able to. You are not going to waste your time listening through a lecture that you're not interested in. For example, if you go to conferences listening to new technology, but you have to go through a bunch of other talks that you're really not into. So webinars eliminate this and allow you to participate in whatever conference or whatever talk that you are interested in. The next one is cost effectiveness. Dr. Lauren has talked about how webinars has reduced travel costs, accommodation, food, insurance, and these are non-existent with webinars. You pay for the platform, you pay for the promotion, and you pay for the speakers. So webinars are scalable. What I mean by scalable is that there are no geographical barriers when you utilize webinars for knowledge dissemination. You can watch a webinar, participate in a webinar, speak in a webinar from the comforts of your own home. There are no limits to the numbers of attendees that are possible to be involved in your talk. You can expand your reach to anywhere in the world. Webinars are engaging. I think, this is a personal opinion, that anonymity encourages participation. during this lockdown period, say in my country, we've been having online classes for the trainees, and I've noticed that as compared to live classes, which are face to face, we are getting a lot more questions. So yeah, and yeah, I think somebody's mic is okay. All right, so you've got a lot more questions coming into webinars because the anonymity, you don't have to put your name, you're a bit intimidated of the lecturer, so you are a bit more brave to speak out and just to get your questions across. So in this aspect, you are expanding your reach. Environmentally friendly. You got to say that the webinars, there are no traveling involved. I'll just give you a bit of a statistic. 175 million trips were done for meetings in 2018 in the US. So with webinars, you reduce this impact, this carbon footprint on the environment. Webinars are reliable. It is very easy to get guest presenters because there's no traveling involved. You can invite people from any country that you would like, and they will probably say yes and just arrange it to their time rather than you're going to have to accommodate them, pay for their flights, pay for their accommodation, etc. Webinars are resilient. You rarely cancel a webinar. You always go on with the show. This pandemic is clearly an example of how conferences are being canceled due to the global situation. So webinars are very reliable. You can do it in rain or shine. Webinars are location agnostic. You can watch it and participate in it whenever you are, wherever you are. And webinars are always on because you are recording a webinar and you can access it later at a time that is more convenient for you. There's a lot of data to be collected with webinars. You can access instantaneously how many people are dialed in, what are the times or what are the situations that there are peak logins. There are a lot of geographical data that you can collect. You can understand more about your audience, where they come from and what level of training or work they are in. There are a lot of question and answers that are involved, and this data feedback allows immediate fine-tuning. For example, if you have a technical issue or if you're not getting an outreach at the moment you are speaking, the next speaker should be able to adjust this to their favor. So I'm just not gonna focus on webinars and what's good about them. Just let's talk about physical conferences. We do miss them. In fact, physical conferences are the way to communicate, to interact, to network before the pandemic, and we are adapting. So let's talk about how we miss physical conferences. Number one, physical conferences allow networking opportunities. They allow the human factor to be utilized. Body language, gestures, and other factors can be used to assess interaction. First impressions will have a stronger impact when you want to start developing a relationship. With webinars, there are heaps of opportunities to do so, but there are fewer chances to interact between one another. You can mitigate this with a live attendee chat and social networking events, but there are not any real ways to interact with other attendees offline. For example, when you are a trainee hunting for a fellowship, you will go to these conferences and find the people that you will want to be mentored to. Thus, with webinars, you are not able to do that. And an email is just not the same as a handshake and an introduction. So that's how we miss physical conferences. With physical conferences, you minimize your distractions. I gotta say that with the amount of webinars that we are exposed to at the moment, we are sitting at home or we are sitting in the office, it is full of distractions. You've got emails coming in, you've got texts, you've got phone calls. At home, you've got the kids, and sometimes your wife nagging at you due to other things. So these are distractions, and you can't really focus on what you want to focus in, what you want to listen. Physical conferences, they eliminate these distractions. Attendees listening in will focus completely on the talk and will be able to disregard other distractions. Virtual events, they have to contend with these distractions, and the in-person distractions are unnecessarily there. So which is why we always recommend that if you want to sit in a webinar, you always find a quiet place to sit in and listen in. Well, physical conferences are business vacations. Let's be honest. We all would want and eager to go to physical conferences because of the other than the content that is being provided to us, you will want to explore that location. So attending an event is an opportunity for people to get out of the office and making people very enthusiastic to do so. This is not possible or with webinars because you are sitting in your own home listening to a talk in the UK, for example. You don't get to travel to the UK and watch and experience that culture and country physically. So with physical conferences, actually, you can connect to all levels of technological maturity. Why I say technological maturity, I mean that it's not about the number of people, but rather types of audience. In webinars, you might not appeal to the more senior bracket of age, which are not really tech savvy to connect to the internet and so on and so forth. So physical conferences, you can get to this audience bracket, and it's important to provide if you're doing a webinar, potential attendees with links to any tech support or FAQs prior to the event. So that's how we miss physical conferences. So in conclusion, webinars and physical conferences are both acceptable. With the current climate, webinars are the flavor of the moment. But we must not forget that the main aim, whether it is online or face-to-face, the main aim is to disseminate knowledge. So a bit of advertising. If you're on Twitter, please follow BGI Compass. We are an online open access journal. So I hope you've enjoyed my talk. It's been an honor to share the screen with giants in social media of urology. So this is my everything else, Twitter, Facebook, and email. If you would like to contact me, thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you, Dr. Advin. I'd now like to invite Dr. Marcelo to share his screen. Welcome, Dr. Marcelo.
Yep. Hi, good morning, everyone. So at least it's good morning here in Brazil. And I was asked to talk about opportunities for research collaboration and social networking. To start with, I was thinking about the biggest difference between a face-to-face seminar and a webinar. And in a face-to-face seminar, you stop your routine and go to the meeting. And in a webinar, it's another meeting in your routine. So this was my schedule when I was preparing to attend the AUA meeting on May. It was completely closed. I was completely dedicated to the meeting. And this was my schedule yesterday for the virtual AUA meeting. I had a surgery in the morning. I had a Zoom lunch with my family. And among them, I had the talks that I wanted to see. So as the others have talked, the webinar is something that you put in the middle of your day and you're not completely dedicated to it. Then I was trying to show advantages of face-to-face conferences, what goes that when you attend a meeting, what do you want to see? So first of all, you want to enhance your knowledge. This is Professor Traxler giving a talk at our Brazilian Congress, and you can do that in a face-to-face conference. You can enhance your skills, your practical skills. So this is 2013 San Diego AUA meeting. In this room, where we had a practical skill robotic surgery course, there was more robots there, more Da Vinci platforms than in Brazil. There were like 10 platforms here, and we had 4 platforms in Brazil at that time, so you could practice. In a face-to-face conference, you can share your knowledge. So you can present your work. That's our resident presenting one of our papers in an AUA meeting. You can do some research collaboration. So here we have the training and teaching committee of the Brazilian Society of Urology. This one is the LACOG-GU, the Latin American Cooperative Oncology Group of genitourinary malignancies. So you can meet people and talk to them and decide what the next steps will be. And you can do social networking. You can go to attend receptions, and you can meet friends in a bar and have a drink with them. So this is Jeremy, this is Pablo from Argentina, Rodrigo from the States, and Jeffrey. So those are our benefits of a face-to-face conference. And as well as I now said, you can do sightseeing. So this was a small meeting in the northeastern part of Brazil where you can give a talk in the morning and then you can see some awesome places like this in the afternoon. So those are the reasons why we go to a meeting, to a face-to-face meeting. And what about webinars? So in webinars, you can enhance your knowledge, of course. Yesterday, you could see a talk about prostate cancer with Dr. Catalana. That's as good as you can get. And as the other said, there are a multitude of webinars that you can choose what you want to see. So this is doc meetings, and there are some days that are about 17 webinars only about urology in the world. So you can choose what you want to see, who you want to listen, and that's something good about webinars and virtual meetings. You cannot enhance your practical skills unless someone develops something to train virtually. It's something that we won't be able to do in a short time. So far, urological meetings, they don't have space for you to share your knowledge, to show your work. ASCO has done it, but AUA meeting, there is no poster presentations or podium presentations so far. You can do research collaboration independently from the meeting. So this is one survey that Jeremy is leading about the psychological impact of COVID-19 on surgeons, but you don't need to wait for the meeting to do this kind of collaboration. So you can do research collaboration, but not during the meeting. You can do a different kind of social networking. I mean, you can do social networking with your family. Yesterday, I was able to attend my daughter's dance at her school while attending the AUA. That would be something impossible in a face-to-face meeting. And you can always have a sip of wine with some friends while watching a webinar. And unfortunately, you cannot do sightseeing unless you put a screen and see something different. So those are my conclusions. I mean, face-to-face meetings, they still have their charm. You can achieve all your goals, while in webinars, we are probably advancing, and maybe one day we can mix both of them. And I guess this is the topic of the next lecture. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marcelo.
Thank you, sir.
Please go ahead, Shaviz.
This brings us to the last talk, sir. Dr. Vineet Gohar, we'd like to invite him on the novel idea of having a hybrid conference. Thank you, sir.
Sure, thank you. Okay, so, you know, when I heard the talks from the previous four speakers, and I think Lauren, Danielle, Zainal, and Marcelo, I'm confused whether, you know, hybrid meetings is the way forward, because it doesn't have sightseeing. So I'll make that disclaimer straight away. But it may have sightseeing because hybrid meeting, what does it really mean? It means a real-time environment meets a virtual environment. And that means you're going for a conference, so you can still do sightseeing, but can the conference people do something to create something really splendid in a virtual environment? That's the whole idea of hybrid, because hybrid is mixing it up. And we know today, as webinars, you know, as you guys have alluded, saying that it can be large, small, multi-purpose. We know it needs technology to support cost-effective global audience. Fantastic. I think all this are variables which are met with, being achieved, and I think are being improvised on. We are so used to classifications as doctors and urologists, so this is not something official, but I'd say there are type 1s and type 2s. And to me, type 1 is basically real time plus a virtual or an internet-based relay, basically what's happening today. You relay it on some platform where it is accessible to everybody. But I really personally want a type 2, which is a real time, and it could be in a virtual environment, which is very interactive. And when we say interactive, you feel like you're actually doing it, like you showed the OT setup. I really want to be there on that console to do something, or at least I want the feeling of that. Is it achievable? Is it possible? And this screen, I'd just like to tell you, we started off with teleseminars.
Sorry, apologies, Vineet. We can't see your screen. Can you screen share, please?
Oh, I see. Okay, so sorry. So that was one technical glitch there. Let me start up again.
It's come now. Thank you.
Okay, so sorry. So yeah, I think I said that there was challenges. So this is one of the challenges. You see, it happens in real time. So hybrid meetings to me is where, type 1 and type 2. And I'm going to talk a little more on what I think is type 2. Now, I said this is something which it's my own term. It's not something which I found on the internet, but I wanted to be interactive. That's the whole point. So we started off with teleseminars, which is fine. You pick up a phone and you call somebody, but what was missing? The visual component. Where we are today is webinars. We have a visual component. We are able to see each other. We are able to interact with each other. We're also able to see sometimes the audience. We may or may not want to, but we do. We can. Where we want to go is basically the next level, or the type 1, which is have a meeting going on. Maybe I can't attend it because they've got budget cuts, but I really want to be there, or I want to see what's happening over there. So yes, great. Let's say something is happening in Las Vegas as they plan in AUA, and you can actually visualize exactly what your friends or your colleagues are doing or seeing, and you can probably experience that. And I think this is basically large-scale meetings where hybrid events will eventually move, and I think they've already moved. Because if you look at it, some of the biggest meetings which are happening, including from Singapore, Eurofair, or AUA as it's happening now, EAU and SIU, they're all going virtual. And all of them have some virtues to it because, I would say, Marcelo, for example, in Singapore, we are going to show virtually all the posters and all the abstracts which were sent to us. In EAU, they're trying to do it differently. They're actually trying to have classes. In AUA, they're actually showing you cutting edge technology and speakers. So it's great because every virtual meeting is trying to do something differently, but they all still belong to the category of type 1, where it's not real interaction. And for the next half of the presentation, or next 5-10 minutes, I want you to think big. I really want you to think big because if you think big, you believe big, you act big, and the results will be big. But for these big results, what is the Achilles heel? Remember, I told you the Achilles heel is technology. And that's why I think we need 5G. And I'm not here to advertise for 5G, but this is what I learned, and this is what I think will change the concept of hybrid webinars. It's a driving global growth. It's already here. It's just that it has to be adopted. This is something which is going to really make the way we communicate completely different. The fastest 4G is about 45 megabytes per second at this point of time in most countries. And what 5G is trying to do is make it 10 to 20 times faster. And if I put it to a simple English, it's basically downloading a high definition film in 60 seconds, which really takes about 4 to 5 minutes or 10 minutes, depending on where you are. So in 1 minute, I can get one film, and that's amazing, right? What does that really translate to on webinars? It really means connectivity to more devices. You can actually connect to multiple devices without any lag. A virtual reality and an augmented reality environment is definitely possible. I'm saying using the word is because this is something which is happening. Students with special needs can learn better with 5G. We do exclude that. There are lots of people who can't see. They're still listening. But with haptic technology coming in, I think it's definitely giving them an opportunity. It's very immersive learning. You just said your daughter was doing that. Imagine if, Marcelo, you could reach out to your daughter and then at the same time pat her on the back. I mean, if she felt that feeling, wow, great, right? And I think that's where 5G is probably leading to. And it's probably something which we really want to see and experience. Robotic applications will expand learning opportunities tremendously. And I'd just talk a little more about this concept of MEMS, which I think will change the whole way urology community will interact in the future. So with that, I would like to say the connectivity to more devices is where I think the first and important thing is, because the more devices you can connect without a lag, the more connectivity we have. And if you can do that in millions instead of thousands as we're doing today, fabulous. What that does is simultaneous users. Look, you want a poll question, many people are able to poll at the same time. But very often we have platforms in these which tell you, oh, maximum 1,000 users. Now I want to be able to poll 50,000 people across the world. And I can't do that if I don't have the technology for it. And I don't at this point of time. Large group meetings. You have an AU meeting sitting out of one room, but you really want to connect it to the whole world, and you want them to visually interact with you, virtually interact with you. You don't have the technology, and there's going to be chaos. 5G will change that. There will be more interaction. What's interesting, and I'm personally have experience with this, is multiple platforms at the same time. Right now, we are able to host it on Facebook. We are doing it on Zoom. What about we can do it on about 15 different platforms at the same time? Every country can access it on the platform which they are most adaptable. Multiple platforms with the ability for communicating in the language of that particular person's choice. That's going to happen too with 5G. So I'm going to reach out in a much bigger way. And I think hybrid is aiming for that, because you want to reach out to more. Otherwise, we're happy with just the fact what's happening right now, but we want to reach out to more in a more interactive way. Let's just look at virtual reality and augmented reality. And I think the difference between this, virtual reality is basically putting on these fancy glasses and then experiencing something like an IMAX movie when you go for, right? You get to feel the movie, feel the action scenes, feel the environment and the emotions that are expressed. So that's great, because I think if in a hybrid conference, even if I can do that, I can sit in my home and put on these glasses and feel the AUA, EAU, or any particular place where this is happening. That'd be great too. But augmented reality, and what's augmented reality? You superimpose the real image. So if I can hold my screen, and let's just say an audience, somebody who's talking about it is showing you a surgery and tells you to put your phone onto that, and you can actually get the whole augmented system into your screen at home. That'd be fabulous, right? And I think this is not just happening with meetings. If let's say it's a simple thing like a live surgery webinar, right? Right now it's all semi-live. I'm just going to show you if I can with the video, because I don't know if there is a lag. This is a concept which Philips brought in with HoloLens. I've had some experience with it when I was in India, and we did a hernia webinar that time, where with Google Glasses, and it was amazing because people feel like they're actually seeing what's happening real time live over there. We'll fast forward this a bit to bring. So imagine this: the surgeon is actually showing you in a virtual environment what he's doing using technology. You're wearing those glasses, or you're having augmented reality technology available for you at home. It's not impossible. Think of it. Years ago, who would have thought that you could actually sit at home and watch a 3D movie by the click of a button where your TV converts it into 3D? So everything is possible. Everything is definitely doable with future technology. And if I had to see something as exciting as this in an augmented reality fashion, and it's a live surgery being shown to me on my own screen, I think it would be great. And I think this is something which hybrid conferences are aiming at. Like I told you, I don't have the time to show you evidences for everything, but this is happening. Believe me, this is not something which I'm just talking out of my head. So I think surgical workshops will become exciting. Hybrid surgical workshops will be very, very exciting. And patient teaching augmented modules. We already in Singapore are trying to do that. I tell my patient, this is your problem. Go home, and he actually goes into this particular website, and he's able to actually see what's happening with him. At least he's able to 3D rotate his imaging, for example. I give him the access to it, and he feels, wow, okay, this is what's my problem, and he feels very interactive with it. When he puts his augmented reality software onto it, it gives him a very clear indication of what kind of surgery am I trying to do, or what is the tumor, or where is the stone. whatever it is, miscellaneous applications. And I think hybrid conferences want to take that on a really big scale. I told you, they want to take it to millions and millions of people. And we will see that soon, because I think the 5G technology will change that. Robotic applications. Why would companies be investing insane amount of money in robotics just to develop robotic platforms? I don't think that's the thing. They've achieved, because, you know, Intuitive, for example, every 36 seconds they claim there is a surgery going on. They've achieved that, but they need to do more. They want to do more. And this is a first US hospital which has actually moved on to 5G 2 years ago. And Swedish communications giant Ericsson is right now working with a UK hospital to talk about special haptics, where the surgeon wears those gloves, operates, and his students, for example, are sitting back and feeling the feel. Wow, right? It sounds amazing. So imagine that if you can do that in a webinar. Now, this is something which you need to think. A webinar is not just me talking about this and being relayed everywhere. I'm talking about a large cloud-based virtual lab. And these virtual classrooms or workstations, they can be accessed by the attendees on a simple internet connection, because 5G will allow that. We don't have it now, 5G will allow it. It makes interactive learning experience very, very widely scattered set of people can join in. It's great. The best part, I think, is if you are having a classroom, for example, and that can also be a webinar, you can actually simultaneously write, perform tasks, share materials in a virtual environment, which is not possible today. But I think it's something which will be there in the future. My son actually has that in his school. I'm amazed at what all really is going on, even with 4G. But there's a little bit of lag. It tends to put you off. So I think these will be time and cost savers. We definitely see that happening. We'll make it immersive. It will be a visual approach, a whole new visual approach to learning. It will be simplifying complex data. This is for research personnel. It's a hands-on experience without the risk of fears and making mistakes, because if my trainee can do what he can on an augmented reality system, or I can show that to him and then he can put it down to his practice, I think that's great. It also helps easy remote training for employees who are far away. You've gone for some fellowship somewhere, and your hospital brings in something exciting. Log in and learn from them, and that's also like a webinar. And it's very innovative. It's very engaging. Now, the smart desk concept, it's a very fascinating concept. I'm putting it up here because these are basically, in 1997, Professor Christopher Pister actually he invented this. And it's possible today because we have the ability to make 3D printing so widely acceptable. And they actually claim that these are the things which it can do, as mentioned here, whether it's data analytics, live transmissions of data, virtual manipulations, and this is how small it is, and this is me magnifying that image. But in the health industry, it's already helping people with disabilities like smart limbs. It's big time coming into play for microsurgical intervention radiology. For example, in RFA, they're actually seeing what's happening at a cellular level. And in optical coherence tomography, they're actually using this to see how a tumor is behaving. Where does that basically translate into webinars and its application? But I think what I want to try to tell you is a webinar is a source for everything, right? You can just means connectivity on the internet. So medical webinars for research scientists can share real-time data with this across many countries. Imagine all of us doing experiments on our patients, and then we are trying to collaborate data, we put it on a cloud. But if you can do this real time, and I think this is something which I think is like example, you're having a transperineal biopsy using different machine platforms. Let's just say that company gives us all access to ability to do transperineal biopsy on their platform and connect those platforms together. That will really enhance radiomics. A hybrid webinar could be the place where real-time direction is happening. Now, don't think about it as just an AUA meeting. It could be something which is happening inside your lab, inside your OT, inside your cystoscopy suite. This is really happening in a cystoscopy suite where a patient swallows what is called as the future capsule endoscopy. The simultaneous upper GI, lower GI scope is done, and 7 or 8 surgeons. And in Hyderabad, I know a center which is doing that. And they're actually accessing real-time data, talking about it to scientists, seeing how best it can improve, all being done on the internet. It's got an amazing application. And I think the more we use it, the more with time, it will become accessible. And we probably will use this in webinars and hybrid platforms. So yes, we may not be able to sightsee very well, but I think this will be engaging as well. So thank you for your patience. And that's my final disclosure. I personally love webinars. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vineet. That was really an eye-opener. Some very interesting facts on how the world forward is going to be. First of all, I'd like to thank Shaviz. Shaviz, it was really pleasure to co-host and have you as moderator. Thank you all the speakers. Thank you, Shaviz. Thank you all the speakers for being with us and for sharing all their wisdom about webinars. I have learned a lot from this. It will be interesting to see how we go forward from here. Now, I have to also thank Alto. I have to thank UroSoMe and iTRUE for this. Special mention for Zishan. He's done a lot of work behind the scenes. And to all of you for making this happen. You're not escaping lightly though, guys. I have some questions for you. And I might not direct it. If you can unmute all of you, if there's no background noise, I'd like someone to raise the hand and I might just ask, or if there's no volunteers, then I'm going to pick one out. But look, I also believe in webinars. I think, you can pack a lot in your day for sure. Like Marcella said, you could attend your daughter's something, you can do this and that. I agree with all of that. Is it going to really replace conferences? Now, the question that I have is, so webinars are great. What about training? What about hands-on training that you get? What about training aspect? Is it going to change? How are webinars going to influence that? Can I just ask, first of all, I don't know, does someone want to volunteer for it? Bhavan, please. You're on mute, Bhavan.
Training is an interesting question. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, thank you.
Finally, my technology is working. But, the reason I volunteered to answer this question is we're actually conducting a webinar on Tuesday, and it is a training webinar. And that's because we run cadaveric courses for our own trainers, and that's not been possible. So what we've replaced it with is robotic webinars, because some of these webinars are actually better. So some of these training aspects are better suited for webinars. Now, the bigger question is, are you going to replace it? I don't think you are. I think they're going to have a happy medium between both, because I think there is space for both. That's what I would say.
So the question there is, when you have face-to-face, kind of hands-on training session or whatever, the companies have to shell a lot of money to get the equipment into one place, unless it's a dedicated center, right? With webinars, you don't have to do it. How much of an impact is cost going to play? Because now suddenly everyone realizes you don't have to have all these big machines move to EAU and AUA and all these big meetings. So do you think from a company point of view, their policies are going to change drastically? Vineet, what do you think?
Yes, I was about to actually, you answered that question actually, Dr. Baskar, because the difficulty in moving so many machines and equipment and to get the personnel to come down. Just give you an analogy. If I have to do a live surgery in my own OT, it's much better than me trying to show that in on site somewhere or in a different site altogether. And companies, I think, are going to keep that in mind. Realize that now with webinars, we can actually showcase the same thing to larger platforms. So maybe in a meeting, they will ask a surgeon to do something and showcase that everywhere. And live interaction happens. We've done that before, but we do realize there are so many intricacies which can't be handled. But I think this will be the way it will influence companies' decisions now.
Okay, next question that I have, and Vineet has covered it, but I want a different perspective. So I might actually go to Yalorin, if I can have your comment on hybrid, meetings. I quite like face-to-face meetings, if I'm honest. You go, there's a touch and feel, you attend, there's networking. That is very, very, we all love networking. Yes, and body language says a lot about it, and you can't have all that. So what do you think? With the hybrid concept, what proportion of our meetings are going to be, let's say, webinars or hybrid meetings, and what proportion do you think will revert back to conferences as we know?
We are humans, and humans have different attitudes. Some people like to touch each other, and some really don't want to be together. They want to be in a separate place. They want to be on their own. So actually, these are two different people, and there is two different meeting types for both. And another comment maybe about what Winnet had already told. I mean, you know, when you have a mentor and when you pass certain stages in the surgical skills, then you can have a virtual mentor who can help you. So these kind of things can also help us a lot. And they do specifically have certain places, but we don't really know, or we can't really fit their, how to say, their suitable places, you know.
Okay.
So they both have certain places and they will act together in the future life, I guess.
Thank you. I'll turn this question a little bit for Jeremy. Jeremy, if you have a meeting in Hong Kong, I'd quite like to come and see your place. I'd quite like to be there. Webinar is great, but you know, what about the social aspect? You know, I mean, the cost aspect is there, but let's say I had to plan a family holiday anyway, and it gives me an opportunity. Do you think that's going to change the way people see things, especially for the exotic destinations?
Yeah, definitely. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So I think webinars versus face-to-face conferences, there are really pros and cons for each of them. And for your question, social networking, definitely face-to-face is better. I think there's no doubt about it. Making connections, and you know, projects don't come, you know, during meetings. Maybe during a drink, we may have a great idea. But what I want to point out is that initially, before the COVID-19 situation, I never liked webinars. I think it's boring. I think it's kind of difficult to engage people. But then as we do more webinars, I start to appreciate the strengths or the advantages of performing webinars, especially in countries where the urologists may not have a lot of opportunities to go abroad to visit a real physical conference. For example, the developing countries. And I think for them, the ability to attend conferences in an online manner, it's really, really great. So I think I would say hybrid conference is definitely a good way to go, really to cater different types of audiences. But the tricky part is how we can do it, or how we can mix it in a relatively smooth manner where speakers, respondent, and also the delegates can attend, where the companies are willing to invest, but at the same time we can cater a certain number of online delegates as well. So it's really tricky, but I think this is something that is worthwhile to explore.
Okay, thank you. Vineet, yes, please come in.
Just a small comment here. I think the concept of hybrid webinar, you have to look at it. Are you a participant or are you hosting the meeting? If I'm a host of a meeting, I wanted to reach out to as many people as I can. And definitely I want more people to come and visit the country, socially interact. And I think as a participant, I want to do that. I want to socially interact, but expenses sometimes can be limiting factors to travel everywhere. So maybe it's a good way that you know, I can attend the AUA this year and I can have an EAU hybrid event to participate as well in. So you can weigh out the balance that way.
Okay, I've got two last questions, if I may. So the first one I'll ask to Daniel. Daniel, how many webinars can one attend? I mean, there's one every day. I mean, you know, if you're not even if you're hosting it, you're tired. I mean, as a listener, I mean, how many can you realistically do in a week? 1, 2, and how many will be interesting? Because the topics, you know, will be very similar. Everyone, if there's a thulium laser webinar every week, I mean, 1 is enough, 2 might be more than enough. You don't need a third one. How many can realistically you attend as a viewer?
So my opinion that realistic, we can attend a couple of meetings a month, because as well, I have today with my family. For example, today is an example. Today is Sunday. We started at lunchtime, and I'm here with you. I'm happy being with you, but it's not possible every week be involved in this webinar. I think that everybody should focus on own interest, and maybe a couple of webinar for a month would be nice. It would be nice to attend to improve your interest.
Marcelo, you had a comment, please.
Yeah, we've even written like an opinion paper. Jeremy took a look at it about like a digital burnout, because there's so many options. There's so many webinars that sometimes you feel you don't feel good that you're not being able to keep up with all information that is available for you. So this is something interesting. I mean, you have to pay attention not to you have to choose well, not to the webinars to influence your day-to-day work, and then you leave your family or you leave your like practice to attend webinars. It's something interesting.
Okay, I've got one last question. Sorry, Zano, please come in.
Okay, so sorry, I just wanted to mention that, but that's the beauty of webinars because it's always on. You can record it and watch it in a lump, like you allocate a Sunday every month to just watch webinars, but I know that's not possible, but that is an option to do that. So that's the beauty of webinars. And I think as a trainee, which I am now at the moment, you get a whole myriad of specialties that you want to listen to, and you can plan it. So what I do is I usually allocate a day in a week in the evening, and I can watch 2 at a time. So I do that continuously for every week. So it's sort of like a catch up, but that's the beauty of it. It's always on. You can do it in the car even. So yeah, that's what's supporting webinars at the moment. I do like sightseeing though.
So I understand that it's convenient. You can replay it. You might be doing whatever activity you might be, and you can still listen to it and still benefit from it. Pretty much like a postgraduate course or something like that. I know Zishan has been with us and he was not expecting this, but I'm going to put him at spot. And then I'm going to ask one of the others. What about super conferences? Do we think in time there'll be 1 or 2 super conferences face to face, and the rest everything is going to be webinars? Because that way you've got, in my mind, there's this concept of super conference. Now I'm not saying AU or EAU, maybe both combined together to make, probably won't happen, but in my mind, there's a super conference in the, let's say in the Far East, there's a super conference here. And do you think that is the concept that will go and then the rest will be webinars? Zishan, if you come in, and after that, I want whoever wants to answer this, please.
In an ideal situation, I think that should be the right one. Have a super conference where only there's 1 or 2 conference which is happening. Everybody enters, attends the conference, the rest all are webinars. But when we have some conference, when we have some plans, there will be so much of, issues with all the societies trying to do the same. So I don't think that's going to be a reality, because if one person does, everybody else wants to do the same thing.
So there's political, so let's say there's political divide and there's personality divide.
There will be.
Yeah, okay.
For me, ideally, after COVID, traveling is going to be an issue for sure. It will take few years for us to, get back to normalcy, try to travel, try to meet our friends. On an ideal note, have a super conference, then rest all should be webinars. But for webinars too, there should be some regulatory body where it is properly regulated. You cannot have a bombardment of webinars in a day and same time multiple webinars. It should be regulated. There should be a schedule made where people know that there is a webinar happening and there is no more other societies trying to have webinar at the same time. Yeah, that's my view.
Anyone else wants to answer about I quite like the idea of a super conference. Put personalities aside. If you had to go in like a boot camp of urology, this is an analogy I'm using, but like a super conference camp for urology, go there. I want to know everything about prostate cancer, and I'm going to listen to these 3 speakers. There are 3 talks happening in parallel. Please, Vineet.
It's a great idea. I think the super conference concept is fantastic. We have to put into perspective, why is webinar happening again? It's because of the pandemic. It's a global pandemic. God forbid we have global pandemics too often. I don't want that. But if, let's say, a situation like this arises, then I don't think we'll have any other choice. We will have no other choice. Then how do we continue to disseminate knowledge, exchange knowledge? I think Zishan is right. We need a regulatory body. I think everybody here is right in their own way that we need to make time. You make time for a conference, so you make time for a webinar. You can attend live or you can see a recorded version. The super conference problem being that it's going to be held, that means in a certain area which geographically, if I can access it and I'm free to access it at that point of time, great. But if I can't, I'm hoping that that hybrid aspect is there where I can virtually access it at least.
Sure. Yeah. Any other comment about this? Yeah, please, Galen.
I have two comments. One is about the physical meetings. You know, in EAU, the stone meetings are always full of the people, and you can't find a place to sit, and many people are listening to the topics, the speakers, when they are standing up. So virtual meetings has a very nice opportunity for those people, because we can listen everybody in every time and in everywhere where you have your own, let's say, free time. So that is the first thing. The second one is, yes, super meetings are, I mean, these 1 or 2 or 3 society meetings will be great, but how about the competition? If you don't have the competition, the meetings will go down, and you can't find the interactions, you can't find the nice speakers. So I think it is better to have individual meetings, which will increase the competition, and we can have better webinars with those.
One last question, if there's no other comment on this. Would you choose a topic or would you choose a speaker? So obviously, if Olivier Traxler is talking about, let's say, I'm just picking up, I hope he's not getting offended, but let's say about urinary reconstruction. Are you going to listen to it because Prof. Traxler is talking, or is it because of the topic? So what is more appealing? Is it the topic or the speaker? Anyone,
Both.
please.
Both.
Both.
Of course.
Please, Bhavan. You're on mute, Bhavan.
I think I would say the topic, because all of us have a specialist interest, and there's a certain appeal to that. And I think if you look hard enough, there are good speakers in every topic, so it isn't that difficult to find a good speaker. And I think that's the other beauty of webinars. And I was speaking to Joe Creswell this morning. You will probably find more speakers who will volunteer to speak on a webinar, partly because there is not an audience they're looking at, and they don't feel as intimidated. And so you've got to look at it that way. So I'd say the topic is the most important thing. We don't want flamboyance, we want concepts.
Okay. Guys, with that in note, I must thank Shaviz once again. Thank all the groups, so the Alto, the UroSoMe, our group, the iTRUE group, Zishan especially for working behind the scene, and everybody else involved. Thank you so much, everyone. It was a pleasure to have you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye.